I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, October the 17th, 2013. The Washington Post reports that Turkey disclosed the identity of up to 10 Iranians who were allegedly spying on Iran for Israel. Washington Post journalist David Ignatius reported in his column yesterday that Israeli intelligence had apparently run part of its Iranian spy network through Turkey, and he quoted knowledgeable sources as describing Turkey's blowing the cover of the spy network as a significant loss of intelligence and, quote, an effort to slap the Israelis. Ignatius said the incident, revealed for the first time by the Washington Post, took place early last year after the Mavi Marmara incident, the Gaza flotilla from Turkey that attempted to break the blockade of the Gaza Strip. During that incident, after IDF soldiers ordered the ship to stop, it refused, and when boarding the ship, the IDF was attacked by armed protesters, and 9 Turks were killed in the clashes that ensued. Ignatius also suggested that Turkey's exposure of the alleged spy network explains why Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was perhaps even more adamant in his refusal to apologize to Turkey over the Mavi Marmara deaths, until earlier this year when Netanyahu offered Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan an American brokered apology in March. Ignatius said U.S. officials were never sure whether the Turkish disclosure was done in retaliation for the flotilla incident or if it was part of a broader deterioration in Turkish-Israeli relations. He cited one source as saying that the Mossad, after more than 50 years of cooperation with Turkey, never imagined that the Turks would shop Israeli agents to a hostile power, and seemed to point to Erdogan in recent years as moving in the direction of promoting the Palestinian cause and moving away from the partnership with Israel. The Times of Israel reports that former Mossad chief Dani Yatom was outraged at the alleged exposure by Turkey. He said if it is true, it's against all the rules which have existed for many years, the unwritten rules concerning cooperation between intelligence organizations that reveal sensitive information to one another and trust one another, not to use that information to harm whoever gave it to them. Yatom said such a betrayal by the Turkish intelligence community would be something that's absolutely not done. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas met with Pope Francis today at the Vatican, where he extended an invitation to the pontiff to visit the Holy Land. Israeli President Shimon Peres and other Israeli officials have also extended invitations to the new pope to visit Israel. The pope, who met with Abbas in a 30-minute private session, gave the Palestinian Authority leader a pen after the meeting, telling him, "Surely you have a lot of things you have to sign," to which Abbas responded, "I hope to sign a peace treaty with Israel with this pen." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also set to meet with the Pope when he travels to Rome next week, where he'll also meet with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro expressed his shock at the recently discovered Hamas tunnel near Kibbutz Ein HaShlosha in Israel that military officials said was highly advanced and likely set to use for a terror attack against Israeli civilians or for kidnapping an Israeli soldier. Shapiro was given an IDF-guided tour of the tunnel, which we reported to you about earlier this week. The tunnel runs beneath Israel's border with the Gaza Strip. Following the tour, Shapiro tweeted that the U.S. condemns terrorist tunnels, supports Israel's right and ability to self-defense, and is focused on advancing negotiations for peace. He called the advanced tunnel discovered near the kibbutz simply shocking, adding that the tunnel's sole purpose is to conduct violent attacks on Israeli citizens and IDF soldiers. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli Justice Minister Tzipi Livni implied today that the Labor Party should join the Netanyahu government for the sake of peace. Livni told Army Radio the opposition leader Sheli Yachimovich of Labor says she'll only join the government once there's an agreement or she thinks talks are serious enough. Livni said, well, it's not enough to give a speech about peace. Even if it's a good speech, it's important to implement it. Livni said in order to allow significant decisions to be made in the future, there is a need for true and essential support within the Israeli government. She said Labor should have joined the coalition in the first place, but that it was, quote, better late than never to wave the flag of peace. And while not divulging details of current peace talks with the Palestinians, as per a directive from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, when asked, Livni said that Palestinian terrorists will continue to be released from Israeli prisons as negotiations continue. She said it's part of our commitment and it will happen. Livni also said that recent terror attacks in the West Bank would not stop talks from continuing. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon praised the American Jewish community for its partnership in fighting injustice, while also stressing the need to, quote, stand strong against extremists.
Anniversary.
Ban made the remarks at the 50th anniversary tribute of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations held Tuesday night in New York City, as we reported to you yesterday. Ban said of the UN and American Jewry, over the years we have campaigned together against injustice and intolerance. Our joint legacy is solid. He said the question now is where we go from here. Ban also said there is no room for anti-Semitism in the world. He said too much is at stake to allow such discrimination to persist. He also addressed the resumption of peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians, calling them a welcome step away from the dangerous status quo.
So I'm sitting down in Dallas, which, by the way, is the true promised land. And Malcolm says, why don't you come up here to New York? I said, Malcolm, I don't want to go to New York. He said, no, you got to come up here and help us celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations. I'm saying it's not a bad idea.
And former U.S. President George W. Bush also addressed the gala with a surprise keynote address to end the evening. As we mentioned yesterday, video messages were also presented at the gala from U.S. President Barack Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the chairman of the President's Conference from the past 20 years were recognized with the Strength Through Unity Award.
Development and prosperity of the Jewish state.
The International Liaison Committee, which is the official joint forum of the Vatican and the International Jewish Committee on Interreligious Consultations, otherwise known as the IJCIC, met recently to discuss ways of combating racism and anti-Semitism and to promote religious freedom. This was the 22nd time the committee has met since it was set up 40 years ago. The committee was co-chaired by Cardinal Kurt Koch, the president of the Commission of the Holy See for Religious Relations with the Jews, and IJCIC chair Betty Ehrenberg, who also serves as executive director of the World Jewish Congress North America. Koch cited the dedication of Pope Francis to work to increase mutual respect and tolerance, and Ehrenberg stressed the need for religious leaders to work together to defend religious practices like religious slaughter and male circumcision. The need for education for both Christians and Jews was also emphasized in order to dispel myths and stereotypes. The University of California, Berkeley announced that it is launching a Center for Jewish Studies. UC Berkeley Chancellor Nicholas Dirks said the center will expand the breadth of Jewish studies scholarship here, connect more students to the wealth of Jewish studies, resources across the campus, and enrich the university's engagement with the Jewish community in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. UC Berkeley has pledged $1 million to the center, which Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost George Breslauer says builds upon the school's long tradition of leadership in the study of Jewish literature, history, and rabbinics. He said it would, quote, provide institutional capacity to deepen these strengths programmatically and to greatly expand our offerings. The center will be inaugurated on October the 30th. And finally, tonight on Shalom TV, Jerusalem Post columnist Issy Liebler and Jewish agency's Barry Spielman joined Mark Golub to talk about Israel's Jewish identity and the relationship between Israeli and American Jewry. That's tonight at 9 on L'chaim here on Shalom TV and shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Thursday, October the 17th, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.